Hi, Rose. Okay. Sorry for the delay. Technical difficulties. So we left off last time in our discussion of Jewish magic on various magical rituals. And one of them that we're going to see here is what is called automatic writing. Okay. This was, someone who was a Kabbalist, a fellow by the name of Joseph Titazek. His community, Salonika, was a very prominent Jewish community with many people who either themselves or their families had escaped from Spain, and Kabbalah was pretty important in this community. So here is what he says and does in order to perform this mystical ritual. He says, "You shall now hear the wonders of the living God about this subject, the secret of the celestial writing, without a hand, without a foot, without ink. It is the same secret by which the tablets of the covenant were written with the finger of God." Okay, so that's already an indication you're going to have something pretty special happening here, right? It's like as big a miracle as the tablets at Sinai. "You shall then know the secret of the celestial finger and the celestial hand. Gabriel is the one who writes. Michael, the angel, is the scribe. These two angels have the power derived from their station to write, if you invoke them, and they write without ink. Many in Israel have fathomed it, and so do Joseph and me. We have learned it with great effort and toil." And it goes on a very detailed piece about, how to write certain holy names, derivations of the four-letter name. He says, "I have sworn in the name of the living God of hosts that immediately an angel will descend downward in order to write, without a hand, without a foot, without a pen. This is what you should say after reciting those holy names. May there be the will of God. And every time you read the name, say the following." So this is a very lengthy ritual where he recites all of this material. It says, "I hereby invoke you by the explicit names I have mentioned." He invokes the angel who is going to write. "You should immediately show your power and your writing in the lower world, in this paper or this book or this wall or this air right now at this time. Show it and subjugate it by the secret of the celestial ink, whatever it is I wish, in abbreviated words and the letters and the vocalization marks above, and you should announce it, the meaning of the words, what each word means. I invoke you with all the power of the letters I have mentioned, so that immediately at this time you should write and engrave and imprint in fire these letters in paper, and that the divine fire will not burn the paper." Very important, right? That would be counterproductive if the paper would burn up and you wouldn't be able to see this message anymore. "The writing will be visible to every eye, so that all will know and recognize that this is a divine phenomenon when they see there is no ink in it. I invoke you, the princes of the celestial writing and the princes of the writing of divine writing with the finger of God. I invoke you with all the power of the sanctity which I mentioned, which I intended. You should immediately demonstrate your power and your writing down here without delay and without any hindrance. I invoke you with the full power of one God whose name is one, and with the full power of the sanctity hidden in the secret of every point, every vowel mark, in the full power of the secret of his fire and its color, and in the power and the secret of the point, in the power and secret of the hidden thought, the full power of the two halves of a ball, the full power of one God whose name is one, which is connected to the supreme point, that immediately your power and your fire will come down and will immediately write this thing which I demand on this paper, which I have placed in a certain place, a true thing, or on the wall, if it is white. You shall then mention the wall or the air or the place you wish them to write and imprint the writing. Okay? You shall then use 4 kinds of ketoret, the holy incense, 3 times with the smoking paper. In order to give it the needed strength, the paper should be treated by smoke before that. After it is smoked, you should enter a room clean of any impurity, and you should recite the names which I have instructed you forward and in reverse. So we're going to stop here for just a moment. Now, the original special writing is the writing on the tablets at Sinai, right? And the kind of writing that is described here, which is involved with the help of angels, it's connected to the divine writing at Sinai. And with the help of these special sacred names and the special powers that come from the letters and the vowels, even the little vowel points, the mystic claims to be able to write like God. How does God write? God doesn't need a pen and God doesn't need ink. Okay? And that is what the mystic claims to be able to do here. Now, so this is a form of creative magic. It's just like, building a golem, right? Creating something out of nothing. We don't know who his associate Joseph was. He's, maybe the assistant of the author of this piece. It's been speculated that it might be a certain rabbi by the name of Joseph de la Reina. And we're going to talk about him a little bit later, because he's a very important figure. Okay? It mentions, among other things, the power of the 2 halves of a ball. All right? That might refer, we're not sure, but it might refer to the 10 sfirot and their unification. There's this verse about God's unity, one, the one God whose name is one, which is connected to the supreme point. Okay? What's the supreme point? Well, probably the supreme point is Keter, or maybe the Ein Sof, the level in the divine realm where there are no differentiations. Right? So we have all these, all this incense hanging around. Incense maybe helps to overload this physical senses, and that might be a help if you're trying to go from one state of mind to a paranormal state where the mystic is able to ascend to this higher realm. So that's a little bit about what we have seen so far here. Questions or comments up to here? Yes, Lou.
So there's one example that I'm aware of in Torah about God writing, and that's the 10 Commandments, the first 2 tablets.
Right.
Also later in the Bible, in the book of Daniel, The words appeared on the wall. Are there other biblical examples, and are there other examples attributed to post-biblical?
There are not that I'm aware of within Scripture. There are different forms of creative magic that are mentioned in the Talmud, specifically related to the writing of amulets. It was, that was kind of an accepted thing in the time of the Talmud. And some of the rabbis were acknowledged masters at that tactic.
But that's human writing.
Yes.
Are there other examples, even not necessarily true, but referred to, of celestial writing?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Not that I can think of offhand. I don't see that in the rabbinic tradition. But, I would remind you that, it has a lot in common with other kinds of creative magic. Okay. Other comments or questions here? All right. Charging ahead. So, after you have recited it 70 times with the invocation every time, immediately the secret of Gabriel and Michael will descend, their whole stature and their power, and they will write what you ask them to, or what you will wish to know, whether it is true or not. I swear in the name of God, praise be He, it will happen exactly as I am telling you. In case you don't believe me, I promise you, this is what's going to happen. And then when you envision this celestial writing, you will know that there is a God in Israel, you and everyone else who observes this, and the Spirit of God is upon you. It's like, in addition to going into this paranormal state where the Spirit of God is upon you, you will witness this miracle. It's just like, last week, yesterday in the Torah portion, talks about how, when the people saw that God had brought them to the other side and defeated Pharaoh's army, then they knew. They believed in God and in Moses, his servant. That's what the verse says. So, seeing this is going to be believing. Continuing, the secret of this supernal writing is the secret of the descent of the power of God and his glory. The people of the world call it a written question. The secret included in this writing should be believed by everyone, like the one who had written it originally, for it is real prophecy, and it will come true completely. This is the secret of the supernal writing. With this power, you can achieve the ability to write whatever you wish, be it a great deal or just a little. You shall understand the secret of the writing name, guided by an angel, whenever you wish it, and everything written in this way, you should believe to be true as if it were done by God himself. With this secret, there is nothing you cannot achieve, like actual prophecy itself. Right? So, how to become a prophet 101. Do not hesitate to try it alone or in any way you wish. Only the room should be clean and pure of any impure thing. This you should observe. Right? So, minimal prerequisites. Right? This practice should be done with full observance without any neglect. The woman of the house should be clean of any impurity. It should begin by 2 days of complete fasting. That'll affect your state of mind, right? And on the third day, it should be performed. The person doing it should not drink any wine, and he should eat on that day only after performing the practice, right? Okay. Before that, he should eat 3 eggs to give him the power for the names. It should be performed in the morning and also after midnight. He should use it only in sanctity and in purity after he has separated himself from a woman for 3 days and nights. The practice should be performed on the 4th day. You should preserve this writing, not showing it to scholars and ordinary people. For if he reveals how it was written, he will frighten anyone who sees it. This is the secret of the supernal writing, which should be revealed only to those who worship God and revere his name, and to the righteous. Only they deserve to know it, and not the evildoers and the sinners of this evil generation, a sinful generation which is completely guilty. In other words, so just a few limitations. All you sinners need not apply, right? You don't get to do this. Only the righteous, and only after suitable preparation, and only doing it exactly correctly, right? So, this is what you do when you do magic. I perform the magic, I do the right formula, and I get results. I bring down the power from above, and I get the results that I want. That's magic. And that's what Titus is telling us here. If you recite the formula 70 times, after which I guarantee you, your mind will have no room for anything else, right? The closest thing it reminds me to is Hoshana Rabbah. When we do 7 processions around the chapel, and with the lulav and etrog, and we say these really arcane prayers with each procession. And by the time you're done with those 7 prayers and those 7 processions, your brain is basically emptied out. I say this as one who usually leads that part of the service. I tell you, by that time, I am in something resembling an altered state. Okay? So if you really want to have an altered state experience in the synagogue, come on Hoshana Rabbah morning. Okay? And if you do the ritual, by the time we get to the end of it, you're definitely going to be in a different place. Okay? So you do 70 recitations of the formula, and then the 2 angels will write whatever you wish. They will answer whatever question you have. So in addition to being creative magic, this is also predictive magic. Right? This is how you will figure out whatever it is you need to know for the future. Right? There are rituals where mystics would ask a question at night, right before they went to bed. And they would, whatever dream they would have that night, when they woke up, they would remember the dream and they would interpret that dream to provide the answer to their question. This is kind of an extension of an early brand of Jewish mysticism that we talked about last year, called Heichalot mysticism, where the mystic would kind of work themselves up to the divine throne room. They not physically, of course, but mentally, and they would learn about future history in the divine throne room. So the secret of the writing name here refers to the idea that, if you know the mystical name of God, that knowledge is going to guide your hand when you write down this information that you can't get anywhere else except from up above. Right? Now, back in the Hechalot mystic practices, it was a very high bar to participate in that. Right? There were severe qualifications. And so there are some pretty high qualifications here for this as well. And you don't share this with anyone who's not qualified, anyone who's not worthy, especially those sinners out there, the bad people, right? You don't want to give sinners power. That's really not going to work out well in the cosmos, right? Now, an extension of this suggests that not only do names of God have certain power, but sacred books also can have certain power. Just by having the book in your possession, according to some sources, may give you some opportunity to attain special knowledge, special power. And that's what we're going to see in the next source. But before we go there, let me stop and ask if anybody has questions, comments, anything you want me to clarify here. How are we all doing? Okay. Moving right along. So this text comes from a Rabbi Chaim Pelagi, 19th century Turkish rabbi, definitely a Kabbalist, but also a very respected halachist, right? Someone whose halachic writings are still frequently quoted today. He was a major Sephardi source, right? And so here's what he says. He says that basically that the book of the Zohar has special power. Even one who does not understand or even know how to read the language of the Zohar should read it, for it has the marvelous power to purify and illuminate the soul. Right? So there were many sages who actually believed this, that owning a copy of the Zohar gave you possession of some special power. Right? Well, this may seem like pure superstition. Okay? And maybe it is. But I have to tell you that this idea is promoted by the Kabbalah Learning Center. That, once you get into a certain level at the Kabbalah Learning Center, they will tell you that for a certain price, they will sell you a set, not cheap. They will sell you a set of the Zohar in the Aramaic, right? So if you don't read or understand Aramaic, you're not going to get a lot of meaning out of it. But they will sell you this and claim that it will give you a certain power. And they make a lot of money off this too, right? And they can turn to a source like Rabbi Pelagi and tell people, well, this is what a highly regarded halachic jurist says about owning the Zohar, that even just to own it provides you a certain degree of power. Right? So for some Jews, that's an article of faith. Right? Comments or questions up to here? Yes, Daniel.
Well, you may have already answered it, but how to read the language. Um, they mean literally like me trying to read Aramaic would be useless. But when I first read it, I thought they were referring to the what the esoteric nature of the knowledge that if you didn't understand what was meant, you should still read it and maybe a little bit would sink in. That's not the case. They mean
No,
you read it even though you can't read it.
right, right.
Okay, well, whatever.
Because there is a certain mystical power within the book. Just as there is power in the 4 letters of the name of God, there's, and if you know how to permutate them or to use them in some way, that too will grant you a power. So also just owning the book with the sacred knowledge contained therein, even if you don't understand the knowledge, having that is a bridge to a certain power.
Rabbi, what do you think of that?
Do I believe it? Absolutely not.
So is it
You'll
just
never see
taking,
me sell you a copy of the Zohar. Daniel, you tell me, you don't read Aramaic so well, right? And by the way, the Talmud's written in Aramaic. The Aramaic of the Zohar is a very stylized Aramaic. The Zohar is written by people who never spoke Aramaic. Okay, so it's a very, it's a variant of Aramaic. And the reality is, even people who spoke Aramaic probably would have had a little difficulty following it. Reading it, you can pretty well make out what it means if you know Aramaic. But the idea that, just having it in hand provides power, well, I don't believe that for a minute. But what I'm telling you is that respected Jews did believe it. Kabbalah Learning Center is something else, right? Chaim Pelagi was, a highly respected community leader and halakhic resource for people.
I certainly don't believe it either. I'm right with you there, but we do have some interesting attitudes towards Torah scrolls and other documents that they should be written on a Torah scroll. For example, the blessing before and after reading on Shabbat. If you don't have a scroll, you're not supposed to say those blessings.
Yeah.
There is something mystically powerful about writing down ascribed letters on a parchment that's
Yes.
different than a Xerox copy of it, which says exactly the same thing.
Yeah, and it is also, the fact in halakha that if you find that one single letter is missing or illegible within that scroll, then the scroll is puzzle. It's not sacred and not able to be used for reading until it is repaired. Right?
Don't you see, is there a connection though between these people's attitudes towards the Zohar in its original language and just being around it, connected with our
There is
belief
something
about
of
a
a
scroll?
connection. I grant that. The difference is, I don't claim any power for myself by virtue of, let's say, contact with the Sefer Torah. Right? I know, but I will tell you, I know there are people who are very upset, because when they have an aliyah to the Torah, right now, they're not supposed to touch the Torah. Right? For many of them, there's something remarkable, something very powerful about grasping the Atzechayim, the rollers of the Torah, when you say the blessing over the Torah. Right? There's something powerful about it, but it's like having a connection to the power. It's not the same as being able to use that power. And what Pelagi and others are saying here is it gives you a way to use the power. So
Hearing you say that the Kabbalah Center is selling it for a lot of money just doesn't sound really good to me.
yes, religion for profit.
Right.
So, I mean, that's what I tell everybody about, the Kabbalah Learning Center. If you went there, you might get something positive out of it. You might get some knowledge that will be helpful to you, but buyer beware, right? Because you should always beware of religion for profit. Okay. Other questions?
I guess that's a whole nother course, right?
That is not a course I'm going to give. I'm really not interested in spending that much time on the Kabbalah Learning Center and its nefarious history and
No, I meant religion for profit.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that would occupy a significant part of the course. That, televangelists, that sort of thing.
Right. That's what came to my mind.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And I think, that's one of the problems in the evangelical world that, many people have just discarded any kind of critical thinking when it comes to their contact with the power. So buyer beware. But most of those people are not listening to me anyway, because they think they have a better deal.
True.
Okay, so the next piece I want to share with you is a parable. It comes from an old midrash, but really a teaching from a 13th century book, retold by a 20th century teacher, Rabbi Gershon Winkler. And here's how he tells it. It's a very creative version of the story, but it's well done. So he says the 13th century Rabbi Isaac of Akko was once observed performing a shamanic rite by a non-Jewish intellectual. And at the conclusion of the ceremony, the guest approached the rabbi and asked how so wise a sage as he could dabble in such superstitious nonsense. And patiently, the rabbi told the following parable. There once lived a man who had never before seen another human being, having grown up in the wilderness, far from any human habitation. One day, while venturing about, he happened upon a village. Curious, he approached one of the homes and peered in through the window. To his utter shock, he observed a man and a woman struggling desperately with one another, panting, sweating, and moaning as they grappled. He then burst into the house, pulled the two apart, and asked them, "What do you think you were doing?" And they explained to him that they had been engaged in a sacred ritual that joined creator with creation, sky with earth, spirit with matter, and oftentimes even resulted in the formation of another human being. The stranger reacted strongly to such a suggestion that such a base and vile act could be in any way considered sacred, let alone powerful enough to create another being. So he left in a huff and returned to the wilds. So you see, Rabbi Isaac explained, how one cannot comprehend the sanctity or worthiness of a ritual when one is witnessing it from outside the context of the tradition that conceived that ritual. Okay? What's your impression from this little story?
I love it.
That's hysterical.
Uh-huh. What else?
You can rationalize anything, right?
Well, that's one way of looking at it.
It has to do with ignorance and being impressed. You can impress. Never mind. I don't have a full formed thought there. I won't think aloud. Sorry.
Okay. Now, I think it illustrates the power of perspective. Right? From our rationalistic perspective, we will see certain things as superstitious nonsense. But the mystic claims to have a higher perspective. The mystic says, no, I see what this is really all about and what it is accomplishing, and I'm going to go for it. Okay. Any other comments or questions here? Okay, so I want to share with you a story, and a couple of you at least have heard me tell this story before. It was way too long to include in its entirety as one of the texts. So I'll just relate it to you in abbreviated form as best I can. It is the story of the rabbi I mentioned earlier, Rabbi Joseph Della Reina. Okay? This is partly about magic and partly about messianism, which is the topic of our next segment. Okay. So I saw your comment, Karen. Thank you. Okay. Joseph Della Reina lived around the time of 1492. We have some knowledge about him that, he actually was a historical person. We know very little, and much of what we know may not be factual. Right? There's legends about him. And what I'm going to share with you is clearly from the realm of the legendary, right? But it's a story that people told and retold and believed. 1492, the years of, leading up to 1492 were really bad years for the Jews in the Iberian Peninsula. There was enormous pressure placed upon them to convert to Judaism, from Judaism to Christianity. And really, the expulsion just put a cap on that, and the suffering of people who had to leave everything behind, many of whom perished or were sold into slavery by pirates. Among those who left for other lands, just, a terrible episode. And for Sephardi Jews, comparable in its effect to the Holocaust in our time. Maybe didn't involve as many Jews numerically, but certainly a very significant percentage of Jews who were alive at that time. Terrible, terrible times. And sometimes when you're living in terrible times, you think, this would be the right time for the Messiah to come. It's just like, in Fiddler on the Roof, somebody, comes along to the rabbi and says, Rabbi, wouldn't this be a good time for God to send the Messiah? And the rabbi kind of sighs and says, we'll have to wait for him in another place. But what if you were a mystic who actually believed that somehow you could force the coming of the Messiah? If you have some kind of mystical powers, you would be forced into thinking that maybe, just maybe, this is the time to utilize those powers. So Joseph Della Reina had a bunch of students, and he decided it was time. And so they believed that there was an angel who would be accessible to them if they performed a certain ritual. And there is much preparation for that ritual. And so they fasted and prayed and fasted and prayed and fasted and prayed, purified themselves in all sorts of ways. And at the end of maybe 40 days, let's say, Rabbi Joseph Della Reina performs this ritual and says, I adjure you, O angel, to appear before me to instruct me as to how to bring about the coming of the Messiah. And lo and behold, the angel appears to him and to his disciples. And the angel says to him, first of all, he says, this is not going to work. You can't force the coming of the Messiah. And Rabbi Joseph Della Reina says, we have to. This is the time. Don't you know what's happening to our people? Et cetera, et cetera. And finally, the angel relents and says, it's not going to work, but if you fast and pray for another 40 days, you can perform yet another ritual, and an angel of a higher rank will come and visit you. He'll probably tell you the same thing that I am, but maybe he can tell you something else, something more helpful. And Joseph Della Reina says, okay, and this angel is gone. They go through the whole business again. They fast and they pray and they fast and they pray for another 40 days. These guys probably got real thin by the time they got into this. And at the end of the 40 days, he performs the ritual that the first angel instructed him to do. And the second angel appears. And the first thing that this angel says is, this is not going to work. You can't force the coming of the Messiah. It's not going to work. But Joseph Della Reina is, he's not easily discouraged. And he says, we have to make this happen. The time is now. It's too terrible what's going on. Second angel says, well, okay, it's not going to work, but if you perform this same ritual again with a little twist, right, you can get the chief angel to come and appear to you. I'm a middle rank angel, right? You need Metatron, right? Or whoever the top angel is, okay? The head angel in the heavenly abode. So, and then he's gone. And Rabbi Joseph de la Reina and his disciples, they fast and they pray and they fast and they pray. And after another 40 days, he performs the ritual and Metatron is there. And what's the first thing that Metatron says to them? He says, you know, what you're doing is not going to work, right? It's not going to work. But Rabbi Joseph de la Reina says, man, it has to work. And we've come so far. You have to help us bring the Messiah. Okay. Metatron says to them, okay, I'm going to give you a ritual. It's not going to work. But here's what you can do. There is a cave where Samael, the evil angel, lives. And with him, his consort, the evil female angel, Lilith. Remember Lilith? You've heard about Lilith, right? Okay. So they will, you know, when you see them in their cave, they will make ferocious sounds. They will make you faint with the power of their barking as they appeared to you as dogs or as bears or some kind of, you know, magical animal kind of thing. Right? But if you are really determined and prepared, you will not be deterred by that. I'm going to give you this magic rope. And if you place that rope around the neck of Samael, it will take away all his power and all his strength. He and his minions will no longer appear to you as dogs, but simply as individuals, and they will do your bidding. And you need to take them to the top of the nearby mountain, near that cave. It's like a couple miles walk. And you'll take them to the top, and then you'll receive further instructions up at the top. Right? And when you do that, we will be able to put an end to Samael and his forces and his powers, and then the Messiah can come. You must not, under any circumstances, give anything to Samael or his minions, right? Don't give them anything to eat. Don't give them anything to drink. Don't give them anything at all. Because if you do, that will break the spell that you have placed upon them, and they will recover all their powers, and you will not be able to complete the ritual. So Metatron is gone. And Rabbi Joseph de la Reina and his students, they all fast and pray and fast and pray and fast and pray. They do this another 40 days. And then they go to the cave. You know, the Metatron gave them the directions. They go to the cave, and these demons are making these horrendous noises. It's the scariest thing you could possibly imagine. But Joseph de la Reina is prepared. He's strong. He's determined. He takes the magic rope that Metatron has given him, and he yanks it around the neck of the chief demon, Samael. And immediately all their powers are taken away from them. And so they start dragging him and all the other demons off to the mountain. And Samael begs and pleads, please give me something to eat. I'm so hungry. Please give me something to drink. I'm so thirsty. Right? And Joseph Del Reyna is not going to do it because, the angel warned him about that. Right? And then Samael says, well, if you're not going to give me anything to eat or drink, at least give me some incense to smell so that I will, have the strength, like smelling salts, right? I'll have the strength for you to continue with me and for me to walk up to the mountain. And Joseph Della Reina thinks to himself, well, what harm can that do? I mean, he's basically a compassionate person, right? Even to evil forces. So, without thinking too much about it, he gives a little pinch of the snuff of the incense to Samael. Bad mistake, right? Incense is something very holy. It was used in the temple, and so it has an inherent holiness. If you try to combine holiness with evil, terrible things result, right? And you're basically kicked out of that level of holiness. And that's what happens here. Samael breaks the bond that has been placed upon him, and they set up a horrendous howl. And it's, some of the disciples basically die from fright. Some of them go mad from this scene. And only Joseph Della Reina and one of his disciples survive this horrendous error. And an angel appears to Joseph Della Reina and says, I warned you. You cannot force the coming of the Messiah. It's just not going to happen. Not that way. God will bring the Messiah in his own time. To which we could add the line from Tevye. Tevye's rabbi says, we'll have to wait for him somewhere else.
Rabbi, if we wanted to look up that story and get a copy of it, what search would we, is it have a name to it?
Well, it has many different forms. One of them is in a book, and I have it handy right here. I could have flipped through and read it to you from here. The name of the book is The Heart and the Fountain. It is edited by Joseph Don. It is an anthology of Jewish mystical experiences. Right?
But if we
It
want,
includes this story.
it's not available online, like as a PDF or.
Well, it
something.
might be. I mean, you can look for it. Just Google Joseph Della Reina.
How do you spell Della Reina?
2 words, Della, capital Reyna.
Della, capital Reyna.
Yeah.
Okay, thank
So
you.
maybe you can find it online. If you can't, go online to the library and ask them if they have a copy of this. Okay. You ever do pickups at the library during the pandemic? Okay.
I haven't.
You have a library card though.
Yes.
Okay. So you can go, HPL to go. And
The
your
Heart
branch-
and Fountain, a Jewish anthology.
The Heart and the Fountain. Yeah. Joseph Don is the editor.
Rabbi,
It may vary in some details, but doesn't matter.
I have a question.
Please.
So the instruction, he says it's not gonna work, but I'm gonna give you all these elaborate instructions anyway. What is the point of that? Is he just trying to set him up to prove his point? And I guess you could question, well, had he not given in to this, gone against the instructions, maybe it would have worked. I mean, I'm not saying it would have worked, but
Yeah.
so what's the point of giving all these elaborate instructions at the same time saying it's
The
not going
idea
to work.
is that there actually is some power in the rituals that he performs. It's enough to bring the angel. It's just not enough to overcome every obstacle. That seems to be the message of the story, and why he's able to get as far as he gets.
I find it to be a very interesting story. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Yes, Rose.
This is all about magic and what the magic was going Kabbalists at that time. How much of that magic was actually believed by most of the people?
How much of the magic was what?
Was believed by his followers.
I would say in popular Jewish culture, it was very widely believed. There were always, rabbis or very sophisticated, educated Jews who poo-pooed it. But on the popular level, it was, I would say, probably 90% of Jews believed in magic, believed in demons, and if they needed to, they tried to use it. Okay, so, as I often say, I'm a 21st century enlightened Jew, and I don't believe in any of these superstitions, Kenai Nahara. And with that, we're going to conclude for today. We'll carry on into Messianism next week. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.